What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. So in today's video, I'm going to give you my top 10 tips to 10% body fat. So this is something that we've helped hundreds of guys manage to achieve and get to around that 10 to 12% mark, which is where things start to get nice. This is where we start to normally get a nice clear six pack come through. We start to get shredded. We start to get lean and look really good. This is something that I've managed to maintain myself for a long time, probably sit between 10 to 13% no matter, depending on the time of year. Something that I feel like I've got a lot of experience to be able to talk about. So let's get straight into it, and let's go straight into the 10 habits that you need to be able to get to 10% body fat. So starting off with number one, steps. This is the unsexy answer that nobody wants to hear. You need to make sure you're moving around enough and getting in a decent amount of step count. For most people, this is gonna be probably around 10,000 per day. See, this is like a little bit of a buzzword now, get your 10K steps in, but it's actually pretty true. Kind of on average, if you're maybe around a 73, 74 kilo guy, you're gonna burn around 300 calories to 400 calories per day from just simply doing 10,000 steps. So if we look at that across the entire year, I mean, that's gonna add up quite a lot as opposed to someone who's completely sedentary. So steps are such an easy way to make sure that you're burning a decent amount of calories. You can be really consistent. You don't really get hungry. You don't really get fatigued off moving around and doing your steps like you do with cardio. It's a really low barrier to entry. You just have to get up and move. And it's a really good habit to make sure that you're doing to get to low body fat. Now, you might have to scale this up over time. Start with 10,000 or even maybe start off with 8,000 and then take it to 10 to 12 and then maybe even up to 15 if you're really digging deep. But high steps is absolutely essential when it comes to getting to a low level of body fat, unless you want to diet on really low food. And I don't know about you, but I like my food. I would rather just do more steps so I can eat more food and enjoy myself. And I just think that's easier to stick to for most people. The second is going to be to make sure that you track your calories. It kind of goes without saying. However, for most people, you have to be self-aware of the food that you're consuming. Obviously, if we want to get lean and lose weight and get shredded, we have to be in a calorie deficit. It's a simple concept. Make sure you're burning more calories than you're consuming every single day. We guarantee this, and we get predictable results by tracking our calories. If we choose not to track calories, we're kind of just gonna see maybe some days we're in a calorie deficit, maybe some days we're not. And calorie tracking is not something you have to do forever. Like, I don't track my calories for a large part of the year. I only really go back to tracking again when maybe I'm trying to get leaner and back into a deficit, or for like the first couple of weeks of a gaining phase, just so I'm getting used to the volume of food again. But I don't spend all my year doing it. So we need to just track food to begin with. We need to understand food. We need to know roughly portion sizes and become more self-aware. And this is how we're gonna be able to get lean and get to that low level of body fat. It's very difficult to do it without. Yes, you can probably eat intuitively to get to 10% body fat, but it's gonna take a very long time. And again, I feel like speed and efficiency is something we all wanna do. We want speed, certainty, we want predictable results. Calorie tracking guarantees you this. Number three is gonna be avoiding liquid calories, or just really limiting liquid calories. Now with this one, you don't really wanna be having lots of calories for something that's not really gonna fill you up. And we can just drink liquid very easily. Like, you can have a cappuccino, it's not really gonna fill you up in any way whatsoever. Or if you decide to have, I don't know, like some sort of protein shake that's got more than 200 calories in it. Again, it's just a bit of a waste. I'm not saying avoid completely. If you like having nice coffees that are gonna be a bit more calorific, or hot chocolate, that's fine. But from experience, when you're trying to sustain a calorie deficit, especially as you start to get leaner, you need to be choosing high volume foods that fill you up. You wanna try and play the volume game. How much food can I get on a plate for the smallest amount of calories? If we start having massive amounts of liquid calories, it's gonna be very difficult to ensure we keep a deficit. For example, olive oil, that is the most calorie dense liquid that you can get. So if you start having loads of this and cooking with this all the time, I'm not saying olive oil is bad, because there's actually a lot of really good nutrients in it. If we're trying to sustain a deficit, this is foods that we typically just want to try and have less of. And if we can pretty much minimize liquid calories, we're going to ensure that getting to that 10% body fat is just going to be a much smoother process, and it's going to be a much more enjoyable process as well. Number four, this is going to be eating a high protein diet. Now, again, this kind of sounds pretty simple, but the reason why we want to be eating a lot of protein when it comes to getting lean is because protein is the most filling macronutrient. Okay, so if we eat enough protein, we're not going to get cravings, we're going to minimize them at least, and it's just going to make dieting much easier. If we're not eating much protein, we're going to get hungry, we're going to get cranky, and we're probably going to overdo it and end up binging and eating lots lots of rubbish food. That's why it's important. And of course, the fact that protein is what's gonna hold on to lean muscle tissue. It's gonna stop you from getting skinny fat. It's gonna help you build shape, the building blocks for building muscle. So we have to make sure we're consuming enough protein. And also we get what we call a high thermic effect protein, which basically means that protein is hard for our body to break down and digest. And guess what? When we eat food, this causes us to burn calories because our body has to utilize and digest this food. So if we're eating a lot of protein, then again, we're gonna get a higher thermic effect of food. Considering this is actually quite a high contributor, or higher than exercise, to our total daily energy expenditure, we wanna be eating quite a lot of protein. So again, more protein is gonna equal more gains, more results. This is a staple of a fat loss diet. Number 5 is gonna be to weigh yourself daily. Yes, daily. I think that that's what most of us should be doing. I don't think anyone should have a bad relationship with the scales. That's for people that aren't confident with what they're doing, they're losing weight in the wrong way, they've got no real proof of concept that what they're doing is correct. So they kind of get scared to get on the scales. If you know that you're doing it correctly and you're in a calorie deficit and you're following it in the correct way, maybe you've got a coach and you know that you're doing things how you should be. Weighing yourself is simply a way to take more data, get more metrics, and just make sure that you kind of start to understand what typical scale weight looks like across the week. Makes you very self-aware as well, and you can start to see the fluctuation. You know, you might know that your weight's a little bit higher on a Monday morning because you've eaten a bit more food at the weekend, and then guess what? By Thursday it starts to drop again. So you need to be weighing yourself a lot, more than just once a week, because you just leave yourself to a fluctuation if you're doing it once a week. So weigh yourself daily, start to understand how your body on a week-to-week basis is going to change depending on what you've eaten, depending on how much salt you've had, depending on how much you've been to the toilet. All these different factors come into play, but you have to be consistent with weighing yourself. Number 6, avoid eating processed foods and lots of high sugary foods, or at least minimalize this. Again, you want to be eating 90% good quality, unprocessed, single food ingredients. I say 90 because I even think sometimes having 20% leeway is too much processed food. Processed food does nothing for you. Bad for your digestion, it's terrible for your gut, it's terrible for your energy levels. You're not going to train well, you're not going to sleep well. It's wrecking havoc, and it's not something that we should be consuming of. Processed food is foods that have got tons of ingredients in them. If you look at the back of a packet and it's got all these different ingredients and emulsifiers and stabilizers and additives and all this crap, we don't want to be eating a lot of these foods because our body's not going to be able to utilize the food that we're consuming. It's not going to be able to use what we want it to do. It's going to have to pull nutrients from other areas of our body to make up the lack of micronutrients, which are basically vitamins and minerals that we're trying to obtain from food. So we need to try and minimize this if we're trying to get to 10% body fat, because we're just going to feel crap. And again, we're not going to get full. We're not going to enjoy the diet. We're not going to stick to it. And when we eat too much processed food and we massively spike our insulin and our blood sugar, this stops us and it inhibits us to be able to lose fat. So if you're constantly eating donuts and cakes and all this crap, you're going to really struggle to lose weight, because one, you're going to feel very hungry and you're going to have a massive crash all the time, and two, your body's ability to burn fat is going to be down here. So we want to make sure that the large proportion of our diet is of good quality, unprocessed, nutrient dense, whole foods, and avoiding the processed crap. Number 7, make sure you're sleeping at least 7 hours per night. Ideally, try and get a little bit more. Sleep is absolutely essential, and if you're lacking in this area at the moment, not only are you gonna feel very hungry, very sluggish, you're gonna have no energy, but you're basically stopping your body's ability to be able to recover and build muscle, and essentially, again, lose fat as well. We start to wreak havoc with our hormones when we get less sleep. We start to get more hunger, we start to get less full. We don't function as well with less sleep as human beings. And it's really the fundamental behind any fitness goal that people often forget. So you need to make sure your sleep quality is of good. This means no caffeine after around midday. This means getting into a good routine in the lead up to bedtime, in the morning, making sure that we're kind of keeping a good circadian rhythm, making sure that we are getting some sunlight first thing in the morning to wake our body up naturally, making sure that we start to wind down a little bit in the evening. We come off our phone and we start, maybe reading a book or journaling before we go to bed to de-stress. These are ways we can improve our sleep, and if we improve sleep quality and get more REM sleep, we're going to feel much better, and we're going to make it easier to get to this low body fat and this position that most of us want to get to. Number 8, which kind of falls back to what I've just said, have a good morning routine. Most high performing individuals that are doing well in life have got a good routine in the morning, and even if that's just pretty simple, they have a routine. They don't just wake up at a random time and roll out of bed and bounce off the walls trying to do everything and forget to have their breakfast breakfast and forget to brush their teeth and, you know, don't get to the gym, like all this crap. They make sure that they're organized and ready to go. And that is what most people who are fit, lean and strong and have the body fat that you want, they will have a good morning routine in place. They don't necessarily have to get up at the crack of dawn, but they will have good structure in the morning. They'll be well organized and they'll make sure they've got their entire day planned and mapped out so they know what they are doing. This is super important. You need to be organized. You need to have a good morning routine in place and just something that works for you. I recommend choosing around 3 things that serve you. Maybe this is going to be journaling. Maybe this is going to be listening to a podcast, going for a walk, just drinking half a liter of water. Choose 3 things and try and stick to those 3 things and make that part of your routine and make that a staple. And then maybe over time you can start to build on this a little bit as you start to become consistent. Number 9, of course, lift weights. Now this is, again, goes without saying, you have to make sure you're lifting weights if your goal is to get to 10% body fat. Look at it like this. If you don't lift weights and you do all of the other things that I've mentioned, you're gonna lose weight. However, there's a big difference between losing weight and losing fat. If we just lose weight, we are not really gonna change our body composition. So let's say we have 2 guys at 100 kilos and they both lose 20 kilos. One loses fat, one loses weight. So they lose 10 kilos of fat and they maybe lose 10 kilos of muscle as well. The body compositional changes are going to be completely different. Guy A has maybe got to around 10 to 12% body fat. Guy B is probably still at around 17, 18% body fat because he's just burnt through a load of muscle. So the composition is completely different. So we have to lift weights so our body has a reason to hold on to this lean mass, and if not build lean mass, so that we start to build shape, look better, and have the low body fat, have the chiseled look, have the lean abs, have the pecs. This is what we need, have the bikini body. If we're not lifting weights, girls, you're not gonna get the body that you want. You have to go into that weights area and start adapting and getting strong. And the last one, be consistent. You need to be consistently good instead of occasionally great. This is where most people massively struggle because they'll smash it for the first month or 6 weeks or even 8 weeks and then they fall off completely. They're not consistent. They try and be perfect and they don't remain consistent for long enough to get to where they want to get to. To get to 10% body fat, it's not going to be a walk in the park. It's going to take time. You're going to have to be disciplined. You're going to have to be patient to get there. You're going to be spending at least 12 weeks for most people, 16 weeks of dieting, of being in a calorie deficit. For some people, it's going to be longer. It's going to be maybe even 6 months, maybe do a little diet break in between. It's not going to happen overnight. And if you are not consistent and you just fall on and off the wagon, you are never ever going to get there. So you need to be consistent throughout the journey. Operate at around 80% consistency throughout the entire week. So, 20% you can get away with, having a beer at the weekend or maybe missing a cardio session at the end of the week because work kind of ran over a little bit. I don't know, you've got a bit of leeway to still get results. If you keep turning up and you keep showing up, you're going to get better results than the person that was perfect for a month and then just stopped doing what they were doing because they just had no boundary at all of how to not be perfect. So guys, I hope you found this useful. These are my 10 ways to 10% body fat. If you follow these 10 tips, make sure you're consistently following them all the time. I can guarantee that you will get the body that you want and you're gonna have the habits, the lifestyle to be able to maintain this going forward. So as always, I hope you found this video useful. Make sure you smash the like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification so you're notified for future videos. And as always guys, I'm gonna catch you in the next video.